This is the Jack Murphy Podcast. Here's your host, Jack Murphy.
All right, welcome back to the Jack Murphy Podcast. Hope everybody had a great weekend. John, by the way, we're at 159 subscribers. And
watch out, Mr. Beast.
As you pointed out over the weekend, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And if you go look at that channel, some of those videos on there get over 2,000 views. They don't convert to a subscriber sometimes, but that's okay. You know what we've done? We've dropped a pebble in the water and made a ripple. And that ripple is going to reach out, and more people are going to see it, and they're going to subscribe. It's fun. I'm not even worried about it. Now, sometimes I get discouraged because I go on YouTube and I see people, and I go, you know, they're not doing anything really special, and they'll have 4 million views. Or
you ever you're rolling around on YouTube, and you're like, you see this dude, Martin Jones. He's got 3 million subscribers.
Right.
And I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah, what's he doing that we're not? Anyway, forget about that. But
what's he got that we don't got?
Today, we've got some very useful information for you, because over the weekend, I was thinking about this. I'm sitting in my house, and I get up to check the thermostat to make sure it's not set too low, because I said, seems unusually comfortable in here. And I got up, and sure enough, it was like a degree lower than normal. I turned it up, and it just got me thinking about how, in my older age, I just get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And it's not so much that it's not like I miss anything. I just don't want as much. I don't have the same desires for things that I used to have, and I don't miss them.
I've become a minimalist in my older age.
Yeah, that's what I want to be. And it's gotten to the point where I get a perverse thrill out of saving money on things or doing without things just because I know now that I can. It's discipline.
You feel like you beat the system. I got one.
It's discipline. If only we'd learned to do it younger. Delayed gratification when we were younger. Then we could buy anything we wanted now. That's what we were taught, and we didn't do it as well as we should have.
Oh, we didn't. I remember the days of acres and golf carts and swimming pools.
Country clubs, had it all. But anyway, I started thinking about that, and I did a post on the Talk this morning. You know, I'm very popular on the Talk, John.
You are.
On the TikTok, and I did a post talking about that.
The kids just love you.
I was walking and talking, and I said, we're going to talk about that on the podcast today. And I said, there is nobody in this land who's any cheaper than my friend and co-host John Garrett.
Cheap is a pejorative. I look at it as a compliment. Like you said, man, if I had every dollar
don't get me wrong. I think cheap is a compliment. Living cheaply, living below your means, doing without things that aren't necessities, I think that is a compliment.
Women often called me cheap because I didn't buy them a big enough house or a nice enough car, so I get used to being called cheap.
Let me stop you right there, because as I see the smoke wafting across the screen, how much do you think you could save every month if you quit smoking those freaking cigarettes?
Let me tell you something. I roll my own cigarettes, and it averages $1.10 a pack. I have beaten the system of smoking.
All right, you've beaten the system on that.
Yeah.
And that's probably a little healthier than the ones that tobacco companies make.
Yeah, I only smoke the healthy tobacco.
Yeah, but tell us some of the ways that you... See, the other thing about being cheap is not necessarily doing it because you have to, but it frees up resources for you to be a blessing to other people. You know,
I guess.
You might want...
I guess there's that. I hadn't thought of that, but thanks.
You might want to give more to your church, or you might want to help somebody in need, or maybe you have a family member that needs money, is suffering. But
let me tell you
something. There's a lot of reasons to conserve.
I look at it like this: if I want to do better in life, I have to be grateful for what I'm given, and I have to be a good steward of my money. I find
exactly
at least 3 or 4 cents a day as I'm out walking on the street. I look for pennies.
I pick them up, man.
I pick them up, and I'm always grateful because I'm like, God. Here's the way I think. God says, "Why would I give you $100,000?
When you don't even pick up the penny.
When you don't even appreciate a penny.
Those are pennies from heaven.
Pennies from heaven. And then when I always say, I'm always grateful, and then I'll find a dime.
I find at this supermarket, I constantly find money. 25. I find quarters, nickels, dimes, pence. I pick them all up.
Isn't it a thrill? It's a thrill.
Yes, I pick them all up and I put them in my ashtray. And when I get about a few dollars, I'll give it to the homeless guy on the corner, or I throw it in a jar. I throw it in a jar and say whatever. But yeah,
you want to see just what I have found at the gym? I keep it.
Let me see. This is going to be funny. Here he goes. Just what he's found at the gym. Holy cow, that's a lot.
That's just what I found in the last 2 years at the gym. There's quarters in there, dimes.
Yeah, we can see it's money. We don't need a close-up. We can see.
I want to make sure you got Abraham Lincoln's good side.
We can see that it's coins. Listen, I have a friend, my friend Lane Fuller, who I'm sure is a multimillionaire, owns property all over the place. And I remember a couple of years ago I called Lane and I said, what are you doing? He said, rolling coins. And I said, why are you rolling coins? You buy a car wash or something? He goes, no, I put my spare
change. How about a laundromat?
He puts his, whatever he has in his pockets at the end of the day, he puts it in a big water bottle like that. Now, he puts bills and coins and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, I called him back a few hours later and I said, what was the total? He went, $3,400.
He's putting John F. Kennedy 50-cent pieces in his. I'm putting pennies in mine.
But whatever, the point is the same. Here's a guy that's loaded, but he works really hard, but he watches his pennies and nickels and dimes.
Pennies turn into dimes, last week I found $1.64. And here's the weird thing. And I don't want to get too spiritual, but as I'm going on my walk,
feel free to get spiritual on this program.
When I'm doing my laps, I'm looking down, constantly watching. And then for some reason, I said to myself, I'm going to do one more lap. And right there in front of me, $1.64.
How about that?
Just like 5 quarters, a couple of nickels. And I think it's God giving me money because I'm very grateful. I'm thrilled when I get a penny.
I'll tell you, that's the other thing about getting older, is learning to be grateful for what you have. I had a very spiritual weekend. But it's learning to be grateful for what you have and the things that you have, not what you don't have. Listen, John, I went to the pastor at my church. He was ordained 45 years ago. Now, I've only known this man for a little over a year, but he's been a big influence on my life. I mean, I just loved him to death. But anyway,
you need help. You need as much help.
I need a lot of help, yeah. Anyway, he retired. He got his retirement over the weekend. And
you drove him to retirement. He couldn't take any more of your shenanigans.
He, after 45 years as a Catholic priest, he retired, and they had a retirement party for him, and I didn't know what to expect. And it was on Saturday afternoon. They had a service, and then afterward they had the retirement party. There were 700 people there.
And since they were Catholic, they were probably all drinking.
And they had a little wine bar outside, but they had great food and everything. And I was just thankful that I had met this man and gotten to know him and how much influence he's had on my life just in a year and a half. Now, this was a guy who never made any money. They don't get paid hardly anything.
I thought they made bank because it's the Catholic Church. And they got the Vatican and all that.
No, they take pretty much a vow of poverty, in fact. And he lived at the oratory for a long time. Just never made a lot of money. Worked 6 days a week his entire.
That's true. You never see rich priests. You always see like the Joel Osteens and
they don't. They make very little money. And they live at the oratory where there's like 40 of them all living together and doing all the work to keep it up and raising money to keep it going. Anyway, what little he's made, he's really taken care of all these years, and he's traveling. That's what he's going to do. He's going to continue to serve where he can and travel. But anyway, it was just a great weekend. But I just read this new report, John. 67% of American consumers say that they're reducing spending on everything. And what they're cutting back most on? Restaurants. I rarely ever go out to eat.
I haven't been out to eat. I went out to eat one time this year, and it's because I had a gift card. It was to Lone Star Steakhouse. I can't afford it. And Dave Ramsey says you shouldn't see the inside of a restaurant unless you're working there if you're trying to save money.
It's great. Well, first of all, I don't like most of the food they cook because they use too much butter and salt. and they use fake ingredients and whatever. I'd rather cook. I feel like the stuff I cook at home is better, so that's why I don't go. And I don't like the service most of the time. I hate when I'm starving and I go into a restaurant on occasion. You sit down, 10 minutes later they bring you the menus and the water, and then 10 minutes later they come back, and then you
I
wait.
hate that.
By the time the food comes, my blood sugar's so low, I'm hangry.
Yeah, I get hangry at restaurants. It's
So-
like, hurry up, just bring me my food. It doesn't take that long to make a hamburger.
So restaurants are the number one place they're cutting back. Clothing. Now, John, you talk about a minimalist. How many shirts do you own?
That I can broadcast.
Yeah, because I have to tell him someday. I'll say, you can't wear that shirt again. You wore it 2 days in a row already.
This
Get rid
is
of that.
my yoga shirt back when I took hot yoga. So this is a 16-year-old T-shirt.
Let me tell you what to do. Go to Goodwill, to the thrift store. You'll find more.
No, they got it's got old people.
No,
poor people germs.
they wash everything and dry everything before they put it on the rack.
Dirty people touch it,
and you
dirty
can
hands.
wash it and dry it yourself. I did. My daughter got me into this going, and here's what I get for Christmas every year from my kids and my sisters. They say, "What do you want?" And I go to the Polo outlet. The outlet. Don't go to the store. Go to the outlet. And if you want to get me something, buy me a XL Polo T-shirt. So I've got about 50 of these. They're comfortable. They last forever. The biggest problem I have is getting a stain on them while I'm cooking or something. But my daughter got me into going to the thrift store, and I find great T-shirts there for like $1.99. The ones I cut grass in and stuff like that. Try that. Or Old Navy, $9.99.
How much money do you think is convenience stores on that list, or where people are cutting back?
I don't ever go inside a convenience store unless it's to buy gas.
I was spending $500 a month at a convenience store when I was doing the morning show here before I got laid off. I realized you go in for a Red Bull and a biscuit every day. It's $7 or $8 over the course of 22 days.
I don't drink Red Bulls, number one. And then I figured out at my grocery store, which is owned Harris Teeter, which is really Kroger, if I buy all my groceries there, when I go buy gas, I get 30-40 cents off per gallon. So if gas is $2.89, I get it for $2.49.
And see, back when you were banking money, working in New York City and San Diego,
care.
you didn't. Most of that you worked just for convenience.
I pulled into the self-service and said, "Fill it up, premium."
Yeah, and now look at you, pinching pennies at the Goodwill, wearing dirty people's clothes.
But now I do it because it makes me feel better that I'm not wasting money.
Pissing away money.
Exactly. So, all right, so clothing was a big one. And shows and entertainment. Shows and entertainment. Well, first of all, let me say this. I think that the price of concert tickets, if you want to look at things that have inflated in cost, we can look at a lot of things. Housing, gasoline really, right now, it's pretty stable. I mean, it's gone up and down, but right now the price of gas, I think, is pretty good.
It stays with the cost of living, gasoline.
Food has gone way, way up. But I bet if you look at the price of concert tickets, they have inflated about as high as anything out there. And
I know. That's the thing, because they're not selling albums or records anymore. So the record companies make their money when the artist tours. That's why it's $1,000 for cheap seats at Taylor Swift.
Right. I mean, it's ridiculous. And but it's any of the shows. Like Billy Joel and Sting were going to do a show here. It was in May. And they postponed it for something. And then Billy Joel got sick, and they've canceled the whole thing. But the nosebleed seats were $575.
Yeah.
And I went,
I'm not interested in that. I don't even like concerts.
I said, I've met Billy Joel backstage before and talked to him and sat, in the
for free.
Yeah, for free. Sat on the first 3 or 4 rows 5 or 6 times for free. I'm not about to pay to sit up in the nosebleeds in the summer at an open air stadium.
That's hard for DJs, former radio personalities, to have to actually pay for concert tickets.
Yeah. I mean, used to, we would go to the concerts. The artist would invite us. We'd sit in the front 10 rows or backstage if you really want to. And then
Where there was always food.
Yeah, there was food, and you got to hang out with the artist and meet them. There was not a meet and greet. I mean, actually hang out with them.
Hanging out with them. I know.
And then,
I remember
and then usually the day before, they'd come and be on the radio with you. Like I've got millions of pictures like that, but there's me and Stevie Wonder.
Let me ask you a question. What would you rather do? Hang out with Stevie Wonder on the morning show or go pinch pennies at Goodwill?
I'd rather hang out with Stevie Wonder. That was a once-in-a-lifetime. There's a great story about how I got Stevie Wonder to come to the radio station that you wouldn't believe, which is involved a water gun.
Okay.
A great story.
Tell me now, or you want to save that for a future
Save
podcast?
it for another day. Let's stick with the money saving right now.
All right.
So, restaurants, new clothing, shows, and entertainment. Now, recently, John, this is how bad I am. Like, I used to have probably 6 belts.
Black belt? I didn't know you took karate.
Not that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the ones that hold your pants up. I had a black one, and I had a brown one, and I had one with little fish on it, and I had a bunch of them. And that one of them was like crocodile, and one was, caiman, and what. Anyway, back in, but I'd had all these belts for years.
That's back when you actually needed to wear a belt.
Yeah. Well,
your pants were too baggy.
Here's the thing: is that now these belts are all way too big for me because I was fatter back then, right? So I can't wear them anymore. So I finally, after years of not wanting to throw them away, threw them all away, or I gave them to Goodwill. So I'd been wearing this one belt, and finally the buckle broke. I had to buy a belt.
Because you got fat again.
No, I needed a belt for when I, tuck my shirt in, like if I'm going to church or something. But anyway, I go look at a belt, and I bought like a fake alligator-type brown belt, kind of a one that I could wear every day or dressy. How much you think the belt cost?
$26.
$84.
Jeez, everything.
And I mean,
ridiculous.
I shopped hard to find, a decent quality belt that looked good. $84. And this was online. This wasn't at a fancy store somewhere.
When I was a kid,
$84.
When I was a kid, my mom used to bitch about how much everything cost. Now I find myself doing exactly the same thing.
But in the story, it says here they're tightening their belts by not buying new belts. Everybody's wearing the old belts. Like this belt that I had that broke, it was so funny because the more I walked and worked out, I was the holes were going down. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I'd have to punch a new hole. I punched 2 new holes in this belt before I got rid of it.
Good feeling. Get you a nail, like a 10-penny
Yeah,
nail,
man.
and punch you a new hole. Yeah.
So anyway, consumers are reducing spending on everything. 75% are concerned that we may go into a recession. I don't know. Everything looks good on the surface right now.
Stock market's up the last couple of days.
I just saw an interview with, who the guy that runs Morgan & Morgan is, right?
Mr. Morgan?
They're America's largest law firm. They're the big injury law.
Oh, the lawyers.
Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Well, the guy that started Morgan & Morgan, that owns Morgan & Morgan, some guy caught up with him and said, you're the top 1% of the top 1%. He said, how much do you spend on advertising your firm every year? He goes, $400 million. And the guy said, $400 million? He said, yeah, but that's nothing. He said, we collect $500 billion. Did he say five? No, he said, we collect $5 billion in settlements about every 6 months. He said, so, that's nothing in relation to what we collect. If we didn't advertise, we wouldn't get those cases to win them and get the money for the people and get our fees and make that money. But they asked him what he did with his money, and he goes, what advice do you give people to do with their money? And he goes, I'd advise you to read 2 books, A Walk Down Wall Street and The Black Swan. And he goes, I'm a black swan guy. And they go, what's that? And he goes, it's what you can't see coming. And he said, you need to be ready for it. And so they asked him what he did with his money. He puts it all in tax-free bonds and treasury bills.
See, I want to pretend that I know what that means, but I have obviously no financial knowledge, or I wouldn't
Well,
be
what
talking
he's saying
about picking
is,
up pennies.
what he's saying is the black swan, tax-free bonds are, you can buy bonds, like say the city of Charlotte wants to build a new sewage plant, okay? And they need the money, so they sell bonds. And you buy, let's say you buy $1 million bond. Well, the bond only pays 4.5%. But because you're helping a major city build this thing, the federal government and the state government charge you no tax on that income. So that $1 million makes you $45,000, right? You don't pay any taxes on it. Well, this guy has.
Is that how bonds work?
That's how tax-free bonds work.
I wish I would have paid attention when I was a young man.
So this guy's got billions that he's putting into the bond, so it's a lot different deal. And then the other thing he buys are U.S. government treasuries, which you're just buying a treasury bond from the government, and they have 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 30-year bonds. You buy them, they pay an interest rate, and you pay federal taxes on them. But they have only not paid off one time in history.
Okay, so I got a question for you. If we're talking about money and Morgan and all that, for $100,000, would you be willing to lose a pinky toe?
Absolutely. Well, it depends. Are we going to have it like surgically, under surgical conditions where they put me to sleep?
Like, you're in a car accident and you have to lose a pinky toe. Would it be worth $100,000?
Why do I have to be in a car? Why couldn't they just put me to sleep and a surgeon cut it off and I get some pain pills and recover?
You sound like a chick. You're just making it difficult.
Yeah, that's fine. But
okay, what about $1 million for a foot?
No, I want both my feet.
Okay.
I love walking. I love my mobility.
$10 million for a foot.
Again, how would I lose it?
I mean, we're just doing a
fantasy. But is it going to be really super painful? Or I'm just going to wake up and it's going to be gone, and I'll have
an aspirin.
I'll have a peg leg. Is it going to be crushed by
No, they just cut it off. $10
million?
Yeah.
I'm in.
$50 million to cut off both your feet.
Both feet?
Yeah, but you can still walk around. You can get prosthetic
feet. $10 million? Nah. I go for one.
$50 million.
Oh, $50 million
for both feet.
I'm going to keep 1 foot. I want to be able to kick one ass.
$100 million.
No, I'm not giving you both my feet.
Okay, $100 million for an arm.
No, I want both my arms.
$100 million for an eye.
You know what? I back out on the first one. I'm not even losing 1 foot.
Really?
I'm happy with my feet. I'm happy with what I have.
$100 million for one eye.
No, definitely not losing an eye. My poor grandfather had one eye his whole life. It was terrible. He'd go, "How you doing?" Listen, when my grandfather died, he had one eye and one leg.
How much did he get? $100 million?
No, he didn't get nothing. He got stabbed in the eye when he was a little boy during the Depression. A kid tried to take his lunch, and he tried to stop him, and the kid stabbed him in the eye. And then he had
what a dick.
He had real bad diabetes, and he lost a leg to diabetes. And let me tell you what he used to do. He had a fake leg, and he got around pretty good. He even drove and stuff. He shouldn't have, but he did. And he would do this. We had about 35 grandkids. They had 7 children. And so he had like 35.
Sounds like his leg was working just fine.
So if you went over there to his house, he'd punch me and my cousin. He'd go, "Watch this, I'm going to have some fun with the little kids." And we'd say, "Yeah." And he'd go, "Oh. And they'd go, "What's wrong, Papa?" And he'd say, "The ants are on my leg." And they'd go, "What do you mean?" He'd go, "When they cut my leg off, they buried it out back. When the ants get on it, it burns." And we would all just die laughing. I mean, think of it now, it sounds very cruel, but it was very funny back then. He was a funny man.
I guess you got to be with one eye and one leg. You got to walk through life. You got to be happy.
He was a funny man. All right, so anyway, let me get back to my list. We got no more restaurants, no more new clothing, no more shows, entertainment, no more belts. Suspenders. People are into suspenders.
That's making or drawstring.
Let me see here. They're spending 47% are spending less on travel. Boy, that's what's really gone up. I don't understand why everybody is into traveling. Nobody wants to stay at their own house. It makes me mental. I love to travel. Like I love to go to the beach. I love to go to the mountains. But it used to be we stayed at these little roadside mom and pop motels. And you went in, and some of them might have a little cheap stove in them, but all they had was a bathroom and 2 double beds and a window unit.
A mini fridge?
And maybe a mini fridge. And you bought your own food, and you brought it in. You could make your own meals, bring snacks in and stuff. And they had a pool. And you could stay there for $39, $40. Not anymore. You go up to Boone, North Carolina, or down to Myrtle Beach.
$150 a night minimum.
Minimum. If you go to the beach, it's $300 at least a night.
And then you're eating at all these stupid restaurants because you got to eat here. Famous Fred's seafood shop, and so you end up spending $1,000 a week.
So anyway, tell us in the comments if you're cutting. Oh, here's another one. I can see you've done this. 27% are cutting back on grooming. How often do you get that haircut?
I get it cut. I got it cut in January, and I'll probably get it cut again in January.
Wow. See, I can't do that. I get really frustrated with mine. But I do go to the cheap place. What's the name?
Master Cuts, Super Cuts.
No, hold on. I've got the app right here.
Shopping mall cuts.
This girl from Nigeria cuts my hair. Charlotte. I love her. She's so sweet.
She's fabulous.
We have the best conversations.
That's the worst part.
What's it
That's
called?
the worst part.
Oh, here it was, right here.
Having a chit chat while they're cutting
great
your hair.
clips. I love talking to her. She's great. You know why? Because she's a black woman from Nigeria. She loves America, and she goes, I am so sick of these people here complaining about this country. All the opportunities. She said, at my house in Nigeria, I had a dirt floor, snakes, spiders. She said, here, I have air conditioning. Refrigerator is full. I mean, she just goes on and on and on about how appreciative she is of America. So I enjoy talking to her every time.
We need more like her.
Yeah, exactly.
She sounds like she assimilated just fine.
Yeah, she did. And she works hard at the...
How much you tip her?
I tip her. It has a maximum amount. It has 3 different amounts. I give her the max every time, $7. So my haircut's like $25. So I go about once every 6 weeks.
That's another thing. Getting a haircut used to be $10. Now it's $25, $30.
Yep. Used to go to old Roy's barbershop, and Roy would cut it, and boom, out you'd go. And there was no tipping back then. Roy got $10.
The guy owned the shop. The money was his tip.
Yeah, that was it. He got it. Now, here's something we don't recommend to save money. A lot of people are doing this. I think the Liver King was doing this. I saw some video and photos of the Liver King. You should Google these over the weekend. He's on something really bad. I don't expect him to be alive much longer. His face, he looked 100 years old.
Did you see his pupils were all dilated too?
Yeah, you saw the same thing I did, didn't you?
Yeah.
So Ozempic is so expensive, people are ordering the active ingredients from China and mixing up their own weight loss drugs. Folks, just get off the couch, go walk for about an hour and a half a day.
Go for a freaking walk. They're going to put their, and I'm not one to judge on being healthy, but I don't understand why everybody is always looking for the next thing. Don't they remember Fen?
Oh,
their faces are melting off their skull. It looks terrible.
Real food. Stop eating processed food. So I forgot to tell you about it. I was at the retirement party, Father John's retirement party, and I leave when the service was over. I had to go to the bathroom, so I walked down the hall.
All that wine.
And I didn't drink any wine. I went halfway down the hall, go into the men's room. I go to the bathroom. I come out, and this hall is 8 deep as far as you can see all the way back. And I have to go through the throngs of people all the way to the back of the line. 700 people there, so I'm at the back of the line. But I knew they had some really good food in there, and it was free. I was going to get some of it. So I'm in the back of the line, and I'm standing next to these 2 sweet little old ladies, John. And one of them, and you know me, I'm nosy as can be, and I'm listening to every word they say. And there's one of them, and she's talking to the other one, and she goes, well, I'm really not excited about getting into my 90s. She says, these 80s have really begun to be painful. I have osteoporosis. And the lady said, well, how old are you? And she said, well, I'm 85. And she goes, and I don't feel nearly as good as I did in my 70s. And the other lady said, oh, well, I haven't had osteoporosis. I don't know how that is. And the other lady says, well, how old are you? And she goes, I just turned 100. And I went, this woman looked about 70, okay? And so she starts telling her life. They didn't know each other. They were just in line together. And they start telling their life story. And this woman said, yeah, she said, I have 5 kids. They're all in their 70s and 80s. She said, I married young. And her husband was a military guy, so they moved all around. He died when he was 67. And I said, where are you from? She said, By this time, I'm in the conversation. I just get in the middle of it, you know.
As you often do.
I said, you don't look 100. And the other lady went, no, you don't. I mean, the other lady was 85. She looked much older than the lady that was 100. And then she says, here's the part that'll kill you. And I said, well, where are you from? And she said, Minnesota. And I said, oh, I live there. I said, what part? She said, Duluth. I said, well, I've been there. And she said, I go back every summer to visit my 2 sisters, and I spend the summer with them. And I said, how old are they? She said, I'm the youngest. She has a sister that's 104 and a sister that's 107. They're both still alive and both still live alone and take care of themselves.
Good genes and good luck.
I said, they need to take you guys to a testing facility and check what's going on with your genetics, because, I mean, I promised you would have said she was maybe 77, walked fine, no limp, no nothing. Her face, I was stunned. But one of the things that she said.
Would you hit it?
John, don't ask me that. That's a rude question. I was at church, and she's a.
Let's just say that you were a single
I'm going to
man.
ignore the question. I'm going to tell you what she said that I appreciated. She said she was talking to the other woman, and the woman was talking about her osteoporosis, and she goes, honey, my best advice for you is just to appreciate what you have and every day and get up and make the best of each day and don't sit on that couch and complain. And I thought, you know what? That's really good advice.
Do you want to live to be 100 years old?
If I'm in as good a shape as she is, yeah, with her. And, hey, and I could tell she had her own teeth. These were her own teeth, and she was sharp as a tack.
See, that happens.
She could
now and
hear.
then. Just like there's that 400-year-old shark that lives off Greenland. It happens.
Oh, they're
every
like
now and then.
900 years old, aren't they?
Yeah, but they don't. You can't make yourself live to be 100.
I didn't say you
lucky.
could. I've told you before, it's about quality of life. That's why
Sure.
appreciate what you have, get your butt up and go get some exercise and eat healthy food. That's it.
Yeah, the stupid Ozempic is going to be the death of a lot of people. We're going to start seeing a lot more in the future, the next couple of years, with Ozempic side effects.
Yeah. Now,
And then people are going to be like suing Ozempic.
one of the things that people do to save money, and if somebody like John, I don't know if this works for you, but I do this because I have a freezer. I bought a cheap freezer from Costco, which I keep in my garage. It costs very little to run, and I buy stuff in bulk. And I'll buy these big, huge things of chicken, and then I separate them out into individual packs and put them in the freezer. And I do the same thing with ground beef and with steaks or roast or whatever. Here's a new deal. The biggest problem with Costco is going. In Charlotte, there are 2, and I don't care what day of the week you go. I don't care what time of the day you go. You'll have to fight for a parking place, fight for a buggy, and fight the crowd while you're in there. It's the most amazing business in the world, Costco.
Are the prices really that good, or do you just have to? Is it good because you buy it in bulk?
Both. The prices are really good on just about everything. And in other words, instead of buying 1 or 2 cans of tuna, you buy a thing that's got like 10 cans.
Right.
But if you add up what each one costs, it's about half what it is at the grocery store. And everything in there is that way.
Yeah, I go to Walmart every day and get what I'm going to eat that day.
Yeah,
but I get cheap stuff.
Walmarts are pretty good. But anyway, here's the great thing. We have what's called an executive membership, John. Now, it's a membership that I would not buy today. I've had it for probably 25 years. And the whole thing with Costco, here's how it works. Costco makes their money off the memberships, right? They only make on their stuff, I think it's 7%. So everything they sell, they have a 7% profit margin. The real money Costco makes is on their memberships.
How much is a membership?
So I think we pay $75 a year for the membership.
How many members do they have, do you think?
Millions and millions of members.
So they make $75 million a month just in membership fees. If they
way
had
more
1
than that.
million-
Way more than that. It's way more than $1 million. You can go online and look it up. I've seen Charlie Munger talk about it before. He was one of the early investors. They make billions of dollars every year. But anyway, we have an executive membership, which means that at the end of the year, I get a big check back from them. Because I get, I think it's 2 or 3% of whatever I spent at Costco, I get back in cash. They return it.
How much was your check last year?
It's usually,
is it sizable?
Oh, it's like $700 or $800.
It's that much?
Yeah. But I mean,
And they just send you a check?
They send you a check, a rebate they call it, your Costco rebate. Now, now they got another new benefit for the executive membership. Now, executive membership, you can go. They open at 9:00, but only for people with an executive membership card. The regular people, the peons like you, John, you'd have to wait till 10 o'clock to get in.
So there's that much of a mad rush?
Listen, by the time you finish shopping, there are 40 people in front of you, and everybody has 1 or 2 carts that are just piled up, or they have a push thing.
I used to go there with my my last wife, but it's been years, and I don't remember. I guess it was busy, but it wasn't ever off-putting, so crazy. It must be.
In Charlotte.
Has it really grown in the last 10 years, or maybe just Charlotte?
I think it's grown everywhere, but in Charlotte, it's just crazy. There's one a few miles from my house, and there's another one up near Lake Norman, and they're both the same way. They're just packed all the time. So speaking of the beach, traveling and everything, listen to this. You see these things where people die strange deaths, and you see these storms that they have where people are down on the beach is packed. They see the storm coming. They see the thunderstorm coming, right? But I guess
talking about Lake Tahoe.
No, I'm talking about like Myrtle Beach or Florida, or Lake Tahoe is one place, but they're at the beach and they're laying out in the sun. I guess they're paying $300 or $400 a night for their condo. They want to get every second of that sun on their body so they can get that skin cancer as soon as they can.
Because they can't be happy at their own house.
Yeah, the storm gets closer and closer and closer, and they just stay there, and then it starts lightning, and they stay there, and they stay there. Well, a lifeguard was impaled by a beach umbrella in New Jersey over the weekend. It went right to her armpit and came out her back. She's going to live, but could have happened. And then I saw another video, these people in Marco Island, Florida. There's a huge thunderstorm, lightning, thunder. There's a water spout. And what do these people do? They go under a little tiki hut at the beach. And what happens? Lightning hits the tiki hut.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned Lake Tahoe, there's a story last week, like 6 people, senior citizens, went out on the boat. They knew it was going to storm. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew it was going to storm. They went out anyway, and they were all lost in the lake. I guess that's a big lake.
It's a big lake, and it's a freezing cold lake. If you fall into the water, you don't last long.
And they weren't wearing life jackets. Yeah, when I see bad weather, especially if you're a senior citizen, you ought to know better. You ought to know by then.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Let me ask you this. Would you take an umbrella through the armpit for $1 million?
If I knew I was going to live and it wouldn't do any permanent damage, yeah. And if I could be put to sleep while they did it.
But you wouldn't lose an arm for $10 million.
Put me to sleep, run the umbrella through my arm, and give me some pain meds, wake me up. Yeah, I'll take the money.
All right, I'll work on that. I'm going to make it happen.
How about this? I saw a guy doing a video over the weekend about real estate, and he's talking about how prices are falling everywhere. And, of course, he's selling something. He sells a course on how to buy a house. It ain't that hard to figure out. Go to the bank and see how much loan they'll give you and how much you got to have down and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, he sells a course on how to buy a house, and he goes, and a lot of people won't do this, but I'm going to tell you it's a great way to get a great price. Find a house where somebody was killed. A lot of people don't want to live in a house like that, or a suicide. He said you can sometimes get great deals on those houses.
Dude, check this out. I didn't even tell you.
What?
It happened over the weekend since you just said that. I was living...
Somebody died at your house over the weekend?
Well, I was living in Mississippi about 5 years ago, and I rented a house.
Right.
And when I moved, the guy who took over, who moved in after I did, my neighbor across the street texted me yesterday over the weekend, sent me a link. There was a random home invasion in that house, and the guy who took the house over from me after I left, boom.
He was killed?
Yeah, and I said, was it they said apparently it was just a random home invasion. They didn't know the guy was home, and I used to think the same thing. Nobody would ever see you. That would be the perfect house. And so I'm thinking, man, it was just a tiny little place. And
I don't know why. It seems to me, I don't know why. You see a lot of these home invasions at little houses like that. Maybe it's just that they don't have transportation to get to a better neighborhood, but do they really think that people in a little house like that's going to have anything worth stealing?
See,
I'm going to do a home invasion. I'm going in a rich guy's house.
Nice place. I used to think when I lived there that nobody would think I had any money.
So you don't have to worry about anything.
But then again, they know everybody's got a wallet. They know everybody's got something in there.
Yeah. All right, so I know how badly you hate to travel. Let me tell you what some people do, and we'll wrap up the podcast with this because I read the story and it really gave me a laugh because I've been on a bunch of these cruises, all for free, I might add.
Back in the radio days?
Never paid for a single cruise. Went every year. I did every itinerary there was to do. Got a free cabin.
I got a Disney trip one year for free. I went to New York
I did a bunch of free
Disney.
I got a ton of free trips. But we had this deal where we would give away some cruises, and we would sell the cruise. Hey, come and go on this cruise. We did every itinerary that Norwegian Cruise Line offered. Now, Norwegian, it's not the best cruise line there is, but it's one of the better ones. And Carnival's not the worst cruise lines, but it's one of the worst ones. But I read this story. So a lot of people that are choosing to travel, they buy Carnival because Carnival has some cheaper cruises. And let me give you a little cruising advice. Never go on a cruise that leaves out of Texas or South Carolina or anywhere north of there.
Why?
Because you're going to have a bunch of days at sea. You're going to get on at a place where the water's nasty and brown. And if you leave Houston, do you know how long it takes you to get anywhere decent?
Okay.
You're going to be at sea 2 or 3 days to get to Cancun.
Right. I went on a Disney cruise out of Orlando, or that port, and went straight down to the
Orlando's
Bahamas.
not on the ocean, so it wasn't there.
You know what I mean? Down there.
Cape Canaveral, or normally the best places to go out of are Fort Lauderdale or Miami.
Okay, I went out of, must have been Cape Canaveral. You go through Orlando to get there, at least we did, from Tampa. But it only took us like a day to get to the Bahamas. It was great. But yeah, going from Galveston
you didn't go out of Cape Canaveral. You went out of Fort Lauderdale.
I didn't go out of Fort Lauderdale.
Then you went out of Miami.
I did not go out of Miami.
There's no way you got there in one day from there, I don't think. Anyway, the reason you do that is because you leave out of Fort Lauderdale or Miami, and you give the first night you stay in Key West. The next morning you wake up and you're in the Bahamas or the Caribbean, and you just island hop. That's it. And you have only one day are you actually at sea, because the days at sea, they suck. You're there in casino or you're out by the pool.
We had a balcony. We just sat on the balcony.
Yeah.
That's back when you could smoke, too, so we'd sit out there and smoke on the balcony.
Of course, can't do that anymore either.
Nope.
But anyway, these Carnival cruise ships now, they load them up to the max. And you buy the drink package and all. And I don't know if you've seen any of the videos, but it's just one big party.
Ghetto.
I hate to say that, but it kind of looks that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're out there doing
cheap.
this thing, which I'd never heard of, boots on the ground, where they have those fans and they pop them and they stomp and all that. Anyway,
I usually scroll past those videos, but I've heard how those cruises have gotten not as fun as they used to be.
They leave out of what is possibly the worst beach in America, Galveston, Texas. Have you ever been to Galveston or any of the beaches are like brown and they have balls of oil.
All that oil?
Literally have balls of oil laying all over them. The sand's hard as a rock, and the water is brown as dirt because of all the rivers that run in there. So this guy, Lee, he goes on a cruise out of Galveston with his 28-year-old high school sweetheart, and they just got engaged, and they're supposed to be going to a loop. There's 4,200 people on board, which is huge. Like even on the big ships I used to go on, which are tiny now. But I remember when we'd go on when they were brand new, and they'd have 2,800 people on it, and you just felt like it's too many people. It's just too many people.
Not if you stay in your room on the balcony.
Just too many people. I can't imagine being on a ship with 4,200 or 5,000.
I didn't go to any shows. I didn't take part in any activities. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Anyway, they're going a loop. This is terrible. They're going from Galveston to Cozumel and back. That's how long it takes to get down there and back. And so anyway, the alarms start going off at 5 in the morning. Alpha team to the top deck. Bottom line was the sewage system on the boat failed.
Jeez.
There's 4,200 people on board. The sewage system failed.
4,200 people?
Yeah. So when that happens, there's no water going to the toilets. So this,
I've heard of those. I've heard of those that happening at sea.
Yeah.
And it's just one big toilet.
So there was an electrical fire, and it left the ship floating in the Gulf of Mexico with no lights, no air conditioning.
This happened again?
No refrigeration, and no working toilets.
Jesus.
There is a Netflix documentary called Trainwreck Poop Cruise.
Okay, so we're talking about this happened a few years ago?
Yeah, and I just read this thing. So basically, awful. I mean, can you imagine how hot it was down in the bowels of that ship in some of these rooms? And
the ship lost its balance. It couldn't
it
keep
had no
the
engine.
ballast full.
Had no engine.
So it was
had
was
no
going back
engine,
and
so it
forth,
had no
and
control.
The poop water was going up and down the halls and the walls.
So basically, what happened was the crew told the passengers to poop in plastic bags and tie them up and keep them in their room.
And they were just throwing them overboard. But yeah, that's a horrible story. That's a terrible story.
Now,
and you know, when that's going on, all you'd want to do, you'd be thinking about, I could be sitting in my house right now.
Of course
watching
you
TV,
would, yeah.
And you'd be stuck out there on the sewage cruise.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to watch that on Netflix, do you?
I'd like to check it out. I follow those stories because they happen, but that one happened a few years ago. And they all got $500 and a free cruise.
Yes.
And a
refund. Well, that's what they were offered. I'm sure that a bunch of people sued them and got I'm sure Morgan & Morgan for the people sued them and got a lot more than that for a lot of people.
Hey, would you go on a poop cruise for $1 million?
I would not have settled for $500 and a free cruise.
What about $1 million?
What makes you think in my lifetime I'd ever want to get back on one of your cruise ships when I just spent a week wading through poop?
$2 million.
Or you get on one of those cruises where everybody gets that norovirus.
Uh-huh.
Where they're projectile vomiting and have diarrhea all over the ship. Wouldn't that be fun?
Would you do that for $10 million?
Maybe. I don't know.
What if they cut your arm off and you're on a poop cruise?
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Okay, I think we've done enough. We've taught you some ways. We've taught you some ways to save some money. We've shown you that you're not alone. We've tried to tell you how to be happy with less, be satisfied with what you have, be thankful and grateful for what you have. And
we talked about how we both used to go to concerts for free and got free vacations, and now we're happy to pick up pennies.
Chicks a lot of times over there.
Shop at Goodwill.
Now we told you how to live longer and appreciate what you have and be healthy.
Because we ain't got nothing but gratitude.
Anyway, have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're up to 159 subscribers.
All right.
We could bust the 160 mark today. So have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on the Jack Murphy Podcast.
All right.
Thanks for watching the Jack Murphy Podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Go ahead, ring it. Get alerts when a new episode drops. And tell your friends about the Jack Murphy Podcast. But only the cool friends, please. Tune in next time for another episode of the Jack Murphy Podcast.